Most monsters in Greek mythology were not created to be defeated. They were created to be feared. They were not mistakes of nature or simple beasts lurking in the shadows. They were punishments, warnings, reflections of humanity's deepest anxieties. To the ancient Greeks, monsters were not just enemies of heroes. They were reminders of chaos, what happens when the natural order breaks. And tonight, we journey back into that world. A world where the line between God, man, and monster was terrifyingly thin. The world that birthed monsters. To understand Greek monsters, we must first understand the world that imagined them. This was a time without streetlights, without medicine, without certainty. Storms destroyed crops. Plagues arrived without explanation. The sea swallowed ships whole. The Greeks did not see the universe as safe or benevolent. They saw it as powerful, unpredictable, and easily angered. And so their monsters were born, not as fantasy, but as explanations. Each one embodied a fear of nature, of punishment, of losing one's humanity. Let us begin with the monster that stood at the edge of the world itself, Typhon, the monster that terrified the gods. If there was ever a creature that nearly ended Olympus, it was Typhon. Born from Gaia, the earth herself, Typhon was vengeance incarnate, created to punish Zeus for overthrowing the Titans. He was not merely large, he was apocalyptic. Ancient sources describe him as towering to the stars, with serpents for fingers, wings that darkened the sky, and voices that sounded like roaring beasts, screaming winds, and earthquakes all at once. When Typhon attacked, the gods did something unthinkable. They fled. Olympians transformed into animals and scattered across the world. Even Zeus, the king of the gods, was nearly defeated, his tendons torn from his body. In the end, Zeus triumphed only through overwhelming force, burying Typhon beneath Mount Etna. And even today, the Greeks believed that every volcanic eruption was Typhon still trying to escape. Typhon represents the ultimate fear, that even the gods are not invincible. Medusa, the monster, who was once human. Not all monsters were born monstrous. Medusa began as a woman. In some versions of the myth, she was a priestess of Athena, sworn to chastity. When Poseidon assaulted her inside Athena's temple, it was Medusa, not the god, who was punished. Her hair became living serpents. Her gaze turned men to stone. Cast out, feared, and hunted, Medusa became a symbol of injustice, made monstrous. When Perseus finally beheaded her, her blood gave birth to Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a giant warrior. Even in death, creation followed her suffering. Medusa was terrifying, not because she hunted humans, but because she showed how easily humanity could be taken away. The Minotaur, the beast born of sin. Deep beneath the palace of Knossos, in a labyrinth no man could map, lived the Minotaur, half man, half bull. The Minotaur was born from arrogance and defiance. King Minos disobeyed Poseidon, and in punishment, his wife Pasiphae fell in love with a sacred bull. The result was a creature too monstrous to exist in the open world, so it was imprisoned. Every year, Athenian youths were sent into the labyrinth as tribute, never to return. The Minotaur did not speak. It did not reason. It existed only to kill. When Theseus finally slew it, the victory was celebrated, but the tragedy remained. The Minotaur was not evil by choice. It was evil by design. Scylla and Charybdis. Death has two faces. For sailors, monsters did not always have claws or fangs. Sometimes they were geography. Scylla lurked on one side of a narrow strait, once a nymph, transformed into a creature with 6 snapping heads, each devouring a sailor in seconds. On the opposite side waited Charybdis, a living whirlpool that swallowed entire ships. To pass through meant choosing how many would die. When Odysseus faced them, he chose Scylla, sacrificing 6 men rather than all. Greek monsters often forced impossible choices. There was no victory, only survival. The Hydra, the monster that could not stay dead. In the swamps of Lerna lived the Hydra, a serpent with many heads. For every head cut off, 2 more grew in its place. The Hydra represented an ancient fear, problems that multiply when confronted. Even Heracles, the greatest hero of Greece, could not defeat it alone. Only with fire cauterizing the wounds could the Hydra finally be slain. Its blood remained lethal long after its death. Some monsters, the Greeks believed, never truly disappear. They only change form. The Gorgons, the Harpies, the Chimera Greek mythology did not rely on a single terror. It overwhelmed the world with them. The Harpies stole food and carried people away. The Chimera burned villages with fire-breathing rage. The Gorgons turned curiosity into death. Every monster guarded something: knowledge, punishment, or forbidden ground. They were obstacles not just for heroes, but for humanity itself. Why these monsters mattered. Greek monsters were not random horrors. They were moral landscapes. They warned against arrogance, disobedience, and hubris. They punished those who defied the gods or the natural order. And most importantly, they reminded humanity of its limits. In Greek mythology, heroes win, but never without loss. Victory is temporary. Monsters always leave scars. The legacy of fear. These monsters did not fade with time. They shaped how the Greeks saw the world and how we still do. They appear in our stories, our fears, our films, our nightmares, because they were never just creatures. They were reflections of chaos, of injustice, of nature's indifference, of the thin line between human and monster. And perhaps that is why they still terrify us. Closing reflection. The Greeks did not imagine monsters to escape reality. They imagined them to explain it, and in doing so, they left us stories that still whisper the same warning. The greatest horrors are not always born in darkness. Sometimes they are born from us. You enjoy stories like this, where history, myth, and human fear collide? Subscribe to the channel for more forgotten chapters of the ancient world. Because some stories were never meant to be forgotten.